Good morning, everyone. Well, the last session of the day, and I'm so excited to continue talking about AI. Coming out of Cannes, when that was one of the hottest topics discussed, gave us really the validation that we, as an organization, we needed to continue advancing and figuring out how to make sure that AI inputs and outputs were inclusive and representative of all cultures. So in this next session, we're going to be digging deeper into the topic of AI, discussing how as an industry we can leverage AI responsibly and effectively to make sure that inclusivity, diversity, and authenticity is represented in all the inputs and outputs, as I mentioned before. Because we really do need to transform marketing practices to make sure that they enhance cultural sensitivity, reduce biases, and ensure diversity in AI. So in AIMM's Modern Marketing track, we've been talking a lot about AI and culture. Data has been digging deep into, obviously, the data sets. We're talking about the large language models, and we're working collaboratively in developing a solution so that as an organization and as the authority of multicultural and inclusive marketing, we can put out a guidance and possibly even, can you all hear me? And possibly even a tool to make sure that we validate those inclusive outputs. So in this enlightening discussion, we're going to be talking about that. And this panel discussion is led by Jim Spaeth, partner at Sequent Partners. Joining him is Alan Schulman, co-founder and chief creative officer at Upper Right. Please join me, gentlemen. We have Don Sklenka, Senior President of AI Personalization at Claritas, and Aki Spicer, Chief Strategist at Kashmir, and of course, AIMM's co-founder, Carlos Santiago. Welcome.
Good morning. So I love this. We're at the end of the program, and everyone's been intently listening, and now let's talk about something technical. We're going to not keep this technical. We're going to keep this very practical. So it's hard to have an event these days without talking about AI. You know, AI is going to solve all of our problems, cure all of our diseases. It's going to take all of our jobs and blow up the world. It might be a little bit of hype. I don't know. I've been following AI personally for decades, and where we are right now with AI is absolutely astounding and remarkable and unbelievable. It's still pretty much imperfect. I mean, you've all heard about AI hallucinating and making up facts, so-called facts. AI's inability to recognize nuance. So my favorite story is add a little glue to your pizza so that the cheese stays on the pie. That came from The Onion, and AI can't recognize satire or irony, maybe. Satire, I guess. And but AI is influencing every aspect of marketing. It's unlike almost anything I can think of where it goes, you know, whether they're talking about creative or media or strategy or direct marketing or influencer marketing or social media, it's influencing everything. And the marketing world at large is really concerned about AI. How can we use it? How can we get benefits from it? How can we avoid some of the shortcomings? We need to be aware of it. At AIMM, we want to think about those same questions, but how are they specifically influencing multicultural marketing, right? Let the rest of the world solve the bigger, broader problems. We need to solve our own problems and address our own problems. And one of the things that occurred to me just listening to some of the talks this morning is, you know, I think we may all agree, it's hard for us all to agree on anything, but we may all agree that it's really hard for marketing to be truly representative of the diversity of all of our cultures when the marketing organization isn't itself representatively diverse. It's really hard. You can't fake it. Think about AI. Is AI representative of any culture, all cultures, some cultures, no cultures? It's a bit of a black box. So it becomes important that we make sure AI is fueled by data that represents the full diversity of our culture, that diversity isn't lost in the algorithms and the model building, and it doesn't get churned down to some stereotypical average. And even stepping beyond the AI, we have a bias and just believing anything that comes out. There's a fancy name for this, and I've forgotten it, but I'm sorry. But if it comes out of a computer, it must be right. So we have to be personally skeptical when we see what comes out of AI. So those are some sort of general ideas, but it really boils down to what happens in practice. So I want to start, first of all, I want to welcome my panel. It's wonderful to have you all here, and we have experts in all the fields we want to talk about. But let's just start with your own personal experiences so far with AI. What have you seen? What have you used? What have you tried? And what have you seen its strengths? Where do we see potential benefit? And what are the watch-outs? What are the crazy things that happen that we need to really be aware of and watching out for? So we could just go down the road here if you want to start, Alan.
Sure. Well, for those of you who saw me speak yesterday, I think content and creative has sort of been the first frontier, as we've all used tools like ChatGPT, and we understand that large language models can help us accelerate ideation, whether that's lists of ideas or just sort of jumpstart our creative process. And so we're seeing that in text, we're seeing it in images. We know what the problems with images are, but it's jumpstarting, copy, it's jumpstarting imagery. It's also, from there, we go into video, and now we're seeing tools that are actually making video and making video from text and making video from images, and it's all moving very quickly. So the creative frontier is really the first frontier. And many of these tools are frankly more consumer, or what we call prosumer, sort of in the middle, not really enterprise grade, not really brand safe yet. But as I said yesterday, if we're leaning into the art of the possible, there's lots of experimentation. So what I've been doing is working with clients on pilots and starting to pilot some of these things, whether it be in copy, whether it be in images, whether it be in video. And now I think all those things are going to combine together. We're not going to have separate applications for text, separate tools for images, separate tools for video. They're all going to combine eventually, and there'll be one sort of master. So, and then there's things like this whole customer service industry where we're seeing chatbots that typically live on your website as a bubble are now going to be some sort of AI, fraction of a human, and what we've seen so far is pretty nascent and pretty Flintstonian, to use a term. But I would say that we have a long way to go to make that sort of authentic. A long, long way to go to make that authentic. But those are some of the early things that we're seeing right now. And as I said yesterday, if you saw my maturity curve, I think in content and creative, we're just at the experimentation phase and balancing, what's possible in the art of the possible with what's actually going to be brand safe. So I think it's still early days, but I'm leaning into the art of the possible rather than the fear of it.
As you do. So I want to come back to some of these things you've mentioned in a moment and see what you think's working, what's not working. But why don't we just kind of go down the line here a little bit and talk about other experiences. Don, what are you seeing from your organization?
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for everyone to come out here. I know that your work doesn't stop when you're at this event, so appreciate the time that you're taking to coming to the stage and listening to us talk. That being said, how many of you here have, at some point in time or currently in your marketing strategies, are executing an A/B test? Like you go into market and you're doing A/B testing, and there you go. That's a problem. Okay. What is A/B testing? Is saying we think as humans it's either this or that. We have hundreds of people maybe in this audience. We have millions of people when we're talking to them in media, and we are literally executing an A/B test. It's either this or that. That's a fundamental issue when we're talking about inclusivity. Now, that being said, AI itself is binary. Humans are subjective. We are the ones that go and start a campaign and we say, we think that this works. We think that this is what this person wants. We think that this is the content. We think that this is the ad that this person is going to want to execute. And then we go through that process. It takes months and months and months. And then we execute an A/B test that we have millions of people watching our ad or millions of people executing the ad campaign. We're going to give 2 creatives. And we're going to say everyone gets one of those 2. Well, what we are able to do from a Claritas perspective is we don't do A/B testing. We don't have decision trees. We don't have if-then logic. We allow and enable AI to do what AI is best at. AI is best at ingesting a lot of data in real time and making decisions in real time based on data, not subjective human decisioning. Humans are slow at making decisions. Humans are also slow at making those decisions 30 to 60 days in advance and never changing or evolving. So that's where we are seeing the differences. We're having conversation with marketers, and they are concerned about AI, and they're the same folks and the same CMOs and the same brands that are executing A/B tests. And how is that possible? How could you be sitting here in 2024 and going to market with one or the other and saying that that is sufficient for our marketing efforts? So in short, that's a problem. And the good news is AI can solve for that.
Great. Aki, what do you see?
Indeed. I'm a strategist. Similar to some of the things you just poked at, fundamentally, humans are imprecise and people are irrational. So if you just start with that, that's sort of what our job is to make sense of that. To touch on your first question, my experience in AI that's relevant to this convo, in a prior, job, we were trying to build a large language system that could help codify, de-risk, measure trends and cultural conversations. Couple learnings from that experiment. Strategists needing to be a bit more nerdy and translate with tech, and tech being a bit more loose on people are irrational. It's not logical, right? If you're looking for the robot to give you an answer, you're probably doing it wrong. What you need is the robot to sort of get rid of some of the rote tasks of trying to find conversations and, scale, measure them. What you're trying to do is prune the bonsai, a reference I would often use of, how do you teach what you want and what you don't want? You're trying to put in where you want it to source from. And that kind of comes back to cultural, if not multicultural sensibilities. People at Twitter don't really know much about Black Twitter, right? And so if you're trying to get cultural inferences from, let's stick with Black Twitter, it's on you to put those inputs in so the robot can keep learning from those inputs. If that never occurs to you, if that's not even a reference, that won't even go into the math, right? I could keep going a little bit deeper in there, but I think those are some of the high-level learnings of really bringing more experiences to the math and the programming of what you want the robot to output, and not assuming that the robot's gonna serve up insights. I think that's a false chase. You still need people to make sense of people who make no sense. The robot is never going to crack that equation. You guys are barking up the wrong tree if you think robots are going to make sense of humanity. All right. So I think you have to sort of be experienced, particularly in subcultures. Let's just stick with a high level one like gaming. Robots are not going to make sense of that. What it can do is tell you trends. All right. It can scale that pattern recognition. It could de-risk some of your hunches, all right? And I think that's the proper place we should be thinking about, as opposed to we're gonna eliminate the thinkers, all right, because these robots are somehow gonna crack humanity.
Yeah, just before we move on, I love a couple of things you just said. I just want to underscore these. It's really difficult to, or maybe something we have to be especially attuned to represent an irrational, emotional consumer marketplace with math. Yeah. Right. That's the whole challenge of behavioral economics. One of my favorite topics. So let's just. So Carlos, what have you seen?
We have begun to explore how to apply AI in understanding verbatims from big research. And of course, we at the Culture Inclusion Accelerator are testing ads all the time, and they include open ends from all cultures, all segments, and it is useful in understanding what people are saying and summarizing it. We don't know exactly, like you said, the robot is not trained in cultural sensitivity, in cultural relevance. It's not trained in understanding diversity, the difference between diversity and inclusion. There is a big difference on what is belonging and how to bring that to life. So all those aspects, if you are thinking about your marketing teams, if they are still confused about what is a cultural insight, don't assume that your AI is going to come up with the cultural insight if you haven't trained it, right? And there's a lot of complexities, obviously, in understanding what is culture relevant to every group, right? It's like saying, okay, is the water warm today? Well, if you grow up in the Northeast, right now the water is warm. If you grow up in the Caribbean, it's like, no way I'm even putting my toe in that water. So what is relevant for one is not relevant for another person, another segment. And we need to understand that AI needs to be trained in all the nuances. It's great at averages, but in the nuances, that's still a human aspect that needs to be brought in.
That's great. So as we think about this, if this were like a little brainstorming session, just imagine if we were in a conference room and we had little sticky notes we stick up on the wall or whiteboard. I would have written up on the whiteboard, train the AI in cultural nuance and cultural authenticity. Because I don't know if anyone's doing that, right? We've got coders at somewhere in California, probably, or Arizona or Texas maybe, and they're working away at this, and they're very logical, mathematical people. Are they thinking about cultural nuance? Are they thinking about cultural authenticity? Probably not. I know the ANA has had a mission for many years to try to make marketing organizations more representative, because some of that insight is very personal. It comes how you see the world and you've experienced the world. Are the coders building AI sensitive in that same way? Maybe that's like one of the first bullet points. We need to investigate that and see if the people creating the AI even understand what you just said, Carlos.
I mean, I'll build on that as a strategist and people. Slang and language alone. There's language literally in the sense of like Spanish, English. Then there's language in the nuance of Spanglish or slang or terminologies. I don't buy that the robots are going to get that. I think it can recognize verbatims and instances. I don't think it knows how to translate the subtext and the meaning, of the 8 ways when you say bruh, what does that person mean? We can do this all day on all kinds of examples. What are they talking about? I don't think many humans can do that, right? It's a whole job to be a culture strategist, right? I don't know that I think the robot can recognize patterns, right? And I think you'll still need conductors and translators of meaning. And I don't know that the robot is going to be predictive. I think people are so irrational and unpredictable, which is what's beautiful about us, I believe, is we'll create new things. We'll make new music. We'll make new patterns. We'll find new slang. We'll invent new juxtapositions, all right? And I don't know that the robot is going to see that. It can recognize it and sort of analyze it after you've created new music and patterns.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible, right? You talk about opportunities all the time, Alan. And if you flip your see all button, it says culture, identities, races, and abilities, right? So if we don't think that our teams are capable of doing this right all the time by all segments, and 50% of them are telling us that they see stereotypes in ads and content means that we still have a ways to go, the human way of producing ads, and we have to make sure we close that gap with AI. So we need to focus on that training. But it's there, the opportunity is there. Go ahead, Don.
Well, I mean, look, we started this little conversation around how do we, we need to train the AI, and I think it's a nice thing to say, but let's be honest, like who's making these decisions in the organizations and brands? Is the CMO and the managing director of the brand, are they actually going to go talk to the engineers and look at the code behind the scenes? I mean, let's be really honest with ourselves. It's not going to happen, at least not right this second. So what is the purpose of the objective here of training the AI models? Let's keep that in mind. Like at the end of the day, we are here at a marketing conference. We are here trying to leverage AI to market your brand and market your product to a larger audience. Again, the goal should be how do we get that audience to react to your content and to your ads? So part of this process in the way of training the AI is to have a large queue of content that is possibly representative of hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people. In 2020, 2015, we didn't have the capability of really generating content or creating ads for hundreds of thousands of people, meaning having hundreds of thousands of versions of creative. So that is now an opportunity. It's not a perfect science by any means, but it does open up the opportunity to train the model in a backwards fashion, meaning if we put 4 creatives in market, the AI has 4 creatives to make a decision off of, that's what the AI is going to do. If the AI has hundreds of thousands of creatives to make a decision off of to say which content is best for that person, there's a more likelihood that the AI can start to train to say, you did not react to this ad, you did not like this ad, you bought the product after seeing this ad. That is learning. AI can then train and spit that data out. Now, we still need humans to evaluate that data and say, what do we do with it? But without that content, without that endpoint, the AI doesn't have anything to train off of. So, I mean, again, I think that's the objective here. We are in a marketing conference. The idea is how do we use AI to better market our products?
Yeah, I want to stick that up on our whiteboard also because we do a lot of work in measuring marketing effectiveness, and it's no surprise to anyone. The better targeted your communication is, and the more personalized the messaging is, the more impactful it is, and that's really impossible to do cost effectively with human beings. That's a great opportunity for AI. But you also said something about how are we going to understand whether the code is culturally sensitive, and Alan, you have some thoughts on that matter. I think you were set up for that.
Yeah, no,
to address that.
I mean, the presentations we just heard before we walked up here, right? The data we heard about Gen Z and about what resonates culturally for the black community, I mean, is so context rich, and it's culture and context. I'm not sure, and Carlos, I'm glad you brought up verbatims because I mean, I've made commercials based on verbatims alone that someone said in a focus group, and we just shot the verbatim because it was so rich with context. And so I think that context is what is going to be the challenge. It's like what you said about behavioral economics. It's the reason why we don't solely decision on data. We live as marketers at the intersection of systems thinking and storytelling. And the means by which we balance those two things as marketers, because we're looking at metrics and data points all day long, but we're also the storytellers. And we have to represent the context within which those stories are told. And I think that's where, if we lean too far into, not to throw humans under the bus, because I think, as I said yesterday, if we put the plumbing ahead of the poetry, we're just we're going to throw the humanity out in context. So I think the question is, Don, how do you get the context at scale? Because if you can get that number of automated creative executions front-loaded in, how do you add the context? That's what baffles me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data signals that we are able to pick up on. So I'm not saying that what we do is perfect. I think it's a stepping stone to something in the future, a couple of years out. But we are able to pick up on at that time that individual saw your content. What is that time of day? What is the day of week? What is the operating system they're looking at on? What is the weather outside at that exact time? What is their IP address? What is their metadata? What prism segment are they in? What persona do they represent? And all of that are contextual data signals, and then we can also scrape the website or the app that they're on, so we can say this is the time of which they're actually seeing that content. So they might see it on a Wednesday afternoon, and their life could be completely different than when they saw it on a Monday morning. And so that is the opportunity right now. Again, I'm not saying it's a perfect science, but it's a way of getting there where we're able to identify those data signals. And as long as we have the plethora of content available to then say this ad on Monday morning should be a different ad on a Wednesday afternoon in real time, serve it, then we're getting there. It's not perfect, but we're getting there.
Wasn't that the promise of dynamic creative optimization?
It was, which is where I came from. But we're humans are subjective, as I started. So we as humans say, we think on Monday morning, everyone in this audience gets this ad, because we think that's right. And then on Wednesday, we think that everyone should get this ad. That was a great way of thinking 2-3 years ago. Now we don't have to think that way. It's also a very archaic way of thinking, that me as one person is going to decide what everyone in this audience gets. That's very archaic. It should be the audience should tell us what kind of content they want, and then we should be able to have the queue or the bench available to deliver it to them. So I think that's that's the shift. But yes, that's an excellent point.
Let me move on, because we're running out of time here. And
Sorry, I talk a lot.
No. This has all been great. I think it's bringing this issue alive for everyone in this room. But let's focus on what either folks in this room should be doing. How should they be thinking about AI, or what should our industry be doing about AI, and how to optimize its benefits, and then also watch out for the pitfalls. So, Alan, why don't we start with
Look, as I said yesterday, I think using it for insights and to jumpstart ideation, absolutely, that's one thing you should be doing right away. And for insights, I mean, clearly what you guys are doing is providing some really interesting and unique new insights to guide what content should you create. I talked about trending conversations yesterday. Not every brand can jump in on a trending conversation. It's not right for their brand pillars, or, it's not just a matter of, oh, here's a news story we can go hijack and draft off of it. It's not that simple. But insights, ideation, and I think from there, you should start piloting and testing some of these things. Even if you don't post them, you can at least start to use some of these tools to see how they work, how would they integrate it into your, what we call the modern content supply chain.
Great, thank you. Don, what advice would you have for the audience?
Yeah, I'll be quick. The last word to use, tools, is what I was going to actually say. So, in the mid '90s, someone was probably upset when they were using their calculator to do all the math and all the marketing, and then all of a sudden Excel came along. They're like, oh my God, my job is going to disappear. No, it's a tool to make your life more efficient and more effective, so you can do other things that humans are great at. That's where we're at today. So my advice is, think about AI right now as a tool in your tool belt. It's not going to solve all of your problems. It's also not going to take all your jobs. View it as a tool that you have the opportunity to add as a marketer into your tech stack. Don't be fearful of the tool, but it could be something that you could use.
Okay, what's your advice?
I'm a big leaner into pilots and doing stuff. Even the experiment I described, that was 4 years ago. It was actually defunded, but so a bit ahead of the curve, where this year suddenly it's a talk of everywhere. So try things. I also, again, I lean strategy, I lean research, I lean people insights. I think bring AI to bear on the drudgery part of the job, not assume that AI is going to somehow eliminate the insights and illumination part of the job. Help people with insightful math be able to do that better at scale, not, oh, well, we'll eliminate that department, because I think what you'll get is some very droll output from a bunch of robots that have no nuance. Certainly not right now.
Carlos?
I think a lot of teams don't know how to prompt AI. Just this art and the science of prompting, right? Like you talk to one of your children one way and another way. You have to find the way to really get from AI to understand what you're trying to get step by step. So don't be timid. The possibilities are there. Understand that the progression is going to be very fast, and your teams need to lean on the learnings from everyone else. So sharing those experiences in a weekly basis and try to build on those explorations to go faster and faster.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience just before we end? Gilbert.
Great. Hello?
Yep.
Testing? Yeah.
There you go.
Great session, by the way. It really leaves us pondering. Alan, I'm with you. I'm all about the art of possibilities, but let me put a scenario that surprised me tremendously and that I hope that it doesn't happen that often, and maybe one of yours reaction. So imagine this. You're in a studio with very senior music executives selecting a jingle, what appears to be a relatively not that difficult scenario. All 5 selected track A. Unanimous. Senior people making a decision. They ran it through an AI system. I have no knowledge of how wonderful or not it was. And AI says track B, not track A. The team of very senior musical experience got FOMO. Oh, shoot, and they selected track B. That to me was a surprise, that very senior executives, all in agreement, would literally flip their unanimous decision because the system said, no, you should go with track B. And back to the art of possibility and the poetry before the plumbing.
Correct.
It just really almost disappointed me when I saw that decision. What would you do in a situation where a group of people unanimously agree at a human level, but AI is telling you, go in a different direction?
So if the question is, do you go with the data decision or do you go with the human decision? And I think that what you try to do is balance the two and say, are we going to listen purely to the data? Or because we have a consensus of 3 or 4 here, we're going to go with the human consensus or the data consensus, right? And I think the context of that situation that you painted, to me, I don't think it's a question of either one. I think it's an emotional decision, and as Don said, it's subjective. It's definitely subjective. If you need the comfort to keep your job of having either the research report in your drawer that justified the decision of which creative you went with, or in this case, which music track you went with, and that's a decision made on job security, you're probably going to go with what the data tells you, because you're being motivated by fear, not by your heart.
And this is my issue that I brought up in my first statement was, here we are, we're doing A/B testing yet again. We are saying one or the other is available. That is my issue with that process right from the get-go. Like, why are we sitting here going, we as 3 people are going to make a decision that one creative is going to be, one track is going to be great for everyone? That is the fundamental issue. That's the issue that we as marketers have to change how we've been thinking about things in the 2000s and 2010s. Like, that was how it was. Now we have opportunity. I would say put all 5 of those. That would be my solution. Put all 5 of them in market and see which ones respond, not us, what we think is best. Let the consumers, let the audience, let the people decide what is best.
I'd love to jump on some of that.
Go ahead. If I could.
I would question what the objective is in this Kobayashi Maru test you're through. Like, if we're going for black nerds, gamers, I doubt this robot knows the tastes of blurs. Just gonna make a bet. Prove me wrong, robot. So I'm curious what the specificity of objective is on how it said B is it. Where I will build on this, and I find some interesting things happening, is AI is becoming very aware at processing patterns of, let's say, I want to make a song in a Stax Records 1960 sound genre. And it's pretty darn good at the pattern recognitions and then you have a human named King Wallonius, he's an influencer, comedian, who adds the funny lyrics on it that makes it BBL Drizzy or relevant to the now. I don't buy that the robot would know to add BBL Drizzy. Prove me wrong, robot, but I think a robot knows how to process a Stax record sound circa 1973, 76. Go, robot, and I think it'll give you a little ditty that's probably cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's same thing with tokenistic imagery, right? It's not gonna know what is tokenistic. I think we are almost out of time. We might have another question here.
Yeah. Oh, good.
That's okay. I'll go really quick. Hey, everybody. Matt Ciminella from Target 10. I was my mind's been going where Aki was going, and I don't know if it's a question or a comment or work to be done. But when I think of queer culture, and I'm sure it's true for all cultures globally, so much of what we intake isn't just a large language model, but the identity of the person saying it in front of you and how they're even presenting at that moment in time. I think of IDIs. I think of just, tonight I'm going to dinner with a middle-aged millennial Filipino non-binary gay man. How he, and I sometimes say she, responds to certain things, and the language we use isn't something a large language model is going to understand. Why? It's not 3 people at the table, it's 2. I'm just vacillating naturally, and code switching is another thing, which a lot of us probably all do. It's a future thing, but I think what I think we all need to make sure that it doesn't get lost in large language models is who's this person speaking, what are they wearing, how are they expressing themselves? Not just what their identity is, but how do they express their identity, even just from I'm pretty cool, I'm a nerd, whatever it might be. So just a thought.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
If I could just chime in with one more thing.
Please.
The conversation is going to continue. We have an upcoming session where we're bringing in the data tracks and the modern marketing tracks to continue the discussion. And Alan, I just wanted to ask you, because we've been having a lot of conversations about that standard in inclusivity and the possibility of rallying not only our industry, but starting with our members so that we can in fact create a guidelines and possibly even a plugin to make sure that as AI continues to evolve at lightning speed, we're able to make an impact today. So if you could just kind of like round set us for the upcoming session, I would really appreciate it.
Sure. I mean, I think what we have an opportunity to do is claim the space. And when I say claim the space, I mean, this organization has the opportunity to sort of say, who's in on the authoring of an inclusivity standard? And what does that look like? And can I get my brand, my organization to sign on to that? That's the first question. The second question is authoring it. What is that standard? And we could argue for 6 months or 12 months, Jim, about just defining the inclusivity standard, but stuff is moving really fast. So I don't know that we have that much time. And then lastly, which is what Carla just mentioned, which is, as we're seeing Adobe and Microsoft and others build these plugins, these AI plugins that are going to be sort of popping up on your desktop in every form, do we have the opportunity to take that inclusivity standard and actually productize it in the form of a plugin? I realize that's down the road a piece, but to sort of sum up, Carla, I think that's what your ask was, right? Which is sort of step one is who's in on sort of owning and claiming that space? Number two, how do we define it? And I think that's what we're going to try to workshop today. And then lastly, which is my own personal bias, which is How can we use the tools we have to productize that standard so that anything that gets created gets, filtered through that standard? So that's a summary, Carla, if that's what you were looking for.
Great, great. Thank you all very much. I want to close with just one thought. Here's what I heard just now. I heard embrace the AI. It creates infinite possibilities. It can enable you to do things you've never been able to do before. Don't trust it. Remember who's the human and who's the robot. Thank you all.
Thank you. That was fun.